Some of you may be old enough to remember when the television show 60 Minutes was a model of aggressive investigative journalism. In their heyday in the 1970s, they struck fear into the hearts of the rich and powerful who had something to hide. A visit from Chief Correspondent Mike Wallace could not only ruin a lovely day, but end a promising career. Regrettably, 60 Minutes has long since joined the rest of the mainstream media as cheerleaders for the left, preferring fawning interviews of our current president or his henchmen over the adversarial journalism that made them a force to be reckoned with. Our guest speaker tonight, Mr. James O'Keefe, has taken up where 60 Minutes left off so long ago. The organization he founded Project Veritas, vows in its mission statement to expose misconduct. Mr. O'Keefe enthusiastically embraces that mission. The cowardice exhibited by the modern press in challenging the corruption, hypocrisy, and amorality of the progressive left has created what you might call a target-rich environment for Mr. O'Keefe. His targets have included a powerful and well-funded community activist organization known as ACORN. Sorry, formerly well-funded. Thanks to Mr. O'Keefe's work, ACORN is now defunct. National Public Radio, whose Vice President of Funding and CEO resigned immediately following the release of Mr. O'Keefe's videos. Planned Parenthood, which very nearly saw its lucrative government funding supply cut off. And most recently, vote fraud enabled by state laws that paved the way for non-citizens to cast ballots and encouraged by Democrat campaigns in a variety of purple states. Well, some of them are red states now. If you haven't yet watched the video of Mr. O'Keefe crossing the Rio Grande in a rowboat wearing military fatigues and an Osama bin Laden mask, I encourage you to do so. This particular video illustrates nicely why the left hates and fears him so. He does not simply reveal the lunacy, stupidity, and evil embodied in the principles of the left. He enthusiastically and cheerfully exposes them to public ridicule. Let's not forget the advice of Obama's mentor, Saul Alinsky. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. Mr. O'Keefe's work has its critics, but it is important, not least because it teaches us new ways to fight back against the left. And I personally am looking forward to learning more about it. Please help me give a warm welcome to Mr. James O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you. Come all the way from New York, New Jersey area. And great introduction. Thank you for having me here. Happy Veterans Day to our veterans. I'm going to give a very humorous presentation tonight, but also a somewhat sobering presentation about what it means to be a journalist in our country these days. Because what he just said is absolutely accurate. Journalism is pretty much dead. And it takes an enormous amount of, sometimes, moral courage to do journalism in our society. And I'm going to tell you some really funny and scary and interesting stories tonight about what it means to be a journalist. You know, it means to afflict the comfortable, right? And speak truth to power, fists in the air. But unfortunately, very few journalists do that these days. They seem to become cozy with those in power. You find them drinking cocktails at the White House correspondents' dinners. You find them afraid. You find them politically aligned with the people they're supposed to be investigating. Or maybe they're just lazy. So I, in college, started a newspaper and decided to put it to the test. I decided to afflict the comfortable, speak truth to power, and in my 20s, President Obama has been the president, so I've afflicted him. Let me just talk a little bit about who I mean, Veritas is my organization. The basic principle behind Veritas is we don't just respond to the media and the government. We actually get the media and the government to respond to us. We don't let them dictate what the narrative is. We don't let them tell us what we should believe. We force them on the defense. And I'm going to start with a story you're all intimately familiar with. Let me just set this up because many people don't know the backstory. 5 years ago, almost exactly, I got a Facebook message from a young woman, Facebook. And the young woman's name was Hannah Giles. And she sent me a note and she said, James, I love this stuff, some of the hidden camera videos you've done on YouTube. Have you ever thought about taking one of your hidden cameras into this group called ACORN? And I didn't really even know what ACORN was. I heard about it in the election. I was 24 years old at the time. And I did some YouTube research. I looked at it and I saw these people barging down the doors of foreclosed homes, squatting homes, breaking the law. I thought, this is odd. They're getting what amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars of federal money and they're breaking the law. Why hasn't anyone done a story on this? I did a little more Googling and found that the New York Times in 2008 actually wrote a story and spiked it. They wrote a story on ACORN and they spiked the story right when McCain was running against Obama. So the most powerful newspaper in America did a story on this group, but they decided it wasn't relevant. They decided it just wasn't newsworthy. And they did do a front page story on John McCain. But I decided, well, this is so unusual. They get all this money, no one goes in and asks questions. So Hannah sends me a message that said, James, why don't you go into ACORN and pose as, I'll pose as a prostitute. Now most people get these types of Facebook things and they just hit delete. But I realized the brilliance of it. If you're going in and you're posing some illegal scenario, that's great. I mean, if they go along with it, that's newsworthy. So I messaged her back and said, well, if there's a prostitute, there should probably also be a pimp. And then I'm thinking, who on earth am I going to find to play these two roles? I didn't even occur to me that I could be the pimp. I thought maybe I'll get a pimp, some Jersey kid who looks like a pimp or something. And I, how am I going to dress like a pimp? So the first thing I do, true story, is I lived at home at the time. I walked upstairs to my grandmother. And I said, do you have like an old furry shawl overcoat? Like a chinchilla fur coat I could wear? And the first thing I didn't even tell her about video or journalism, and she just looked at me and goes, is there something about you I don't know? Why do you need this furry coat? And I said, well, I'm making a video, and then she got really freaked out. And eventually, so long story. I wrote a book all about it. I'm going to tell you a lot of stories tonight. But this Jon Stewart clip on The Daily Show, and of all places, The Daily Show is the last place you'd probably find an accurate summary of what happened. This really just summarizes the whole thing. I'm hoping the audio will work here. Watch him as he takes you through what happened 5 years ago that really pushed me into the national spotlight and began this 5-year-long, many videos released, investigations of Project Veritas. This is Jon Stewart talking about the ACORN videos.
Of course, that's just the right-wing lunatic fringe in this country, race baiting, with coded insinuations and incessant attacks on community organizations such as ACORN. Ever since Barack Obama emerged on the national stage, conservatives have been obsessed with the groups, alleging that they're thugs or committing voter fraud. Well, those accusations didn't really pan out. But that won't stop their paranoia, as evidenced by this hidden camera investigation of an unlikely duo looking for tax help.
Scenario: a young woman pretending to be a prostitute and a man pretending to run for Congress one day walk into ACORN's Baltimore headquarters
and are promptly shown the door.
Is it against the law in Maryland?
prostitution?
Anything that the government's not getting money from is always against the law. We get somebody here from taxes so they can talk to you about Tanja. She want to know how you can make it legal.
Make sure there's a code for it, okay? A code for prostitution. You might have to name it something else. Performance arts. Let's see. Enterprise arts. You can be that. Your business is a performing artist. But you are. Okay, so you're not lying. So stop saying, got it.
Or you could refer to yourself as a toll booth operator. Genital contractor. Used vagina salesman. What's remarkable is how unfazed the ACORN people are by this question and situation. This is clearly not the first time they've been hearing this. Oh, you're a prostitute and a pimp, and you'd like to work through the tax implications of said relationship. Hey, Tanya, get me Form 7D. But I'm sure ACORN has a line that they won't cross.
There's going to be 13 El Salvadorian girls coming into this house, and they're very young, and we don't want to put them on the books.
Please tell me 13 underage Salvadorian sex slaves is the line.
I'll support of the return. You can use them as a dependent. You can use them as a dependent because they live in your house.
Are you kidding me? Did you hear what they...
So I'm sitting there in this room, and I'm just thinking of, I just kind of make it more absurd. I walked, it was in Baltimore, and, you know, Hannah was literally dressed up like a Miami hooker. I mean, she had the stilettos and everything, and we just walked right in, and absurdity after absurdity. First I say I've got the underage hookers, then there's 13 of them, then they're in a container ship. She's telling me, make sure you file it as a performing artist on the 990, because sex is like dancing and all these things. I literally sat there thinking there's no way I could make this more criminal and absurd. And some people say, well, these are just low-level bureaucrats. Well, they're getting millions of dollars of federal taxpayer money. So if they're not intelligent enough to give tax advice, why are they giving millions of dollars of federal money? But it got worse.
Oh, yeah, what's that, 13? Oh, yeah, hooker's dozen. Yeah, let me, I'm going to need another form. By the way, you should try Guatemalans. The shipping charges are half. All right, so this ACORN office has some bad apples, but in Baltimore, I've seen The Wire, the place is dull. You wouldn't see this kind of thing a few miles away at the ACORN office in D.C.
My girlfriend's a prostitute.
Okay.
And I don't know if...
I kind of figured that.
I'm using the money that she's getting, you know what I mean?
Right, but when the police ask you, you don't know where it's coming from. Is what we're trying to tell you.
All right.
We're looking out for you.
Okay, well, that's D.C. I've seen C-SPAN, it's hole. That would never happen in New York.
When you buy the house with a backyard, you get it in. If Tom Jones is going to come and beat you and want money, you get a tin and you bury it down in there and you put the money right in it.
So when we were in New York, and I mean, I had so little money to do this project. I mean, it's almost half comic and half tragic. Such an indictment, which you'll see in a minute, all the fallout. But I mean, we had to take the subway to Brooklyn, and Hannah was dressed up like a Miami hooker, but she's she's a very attractive young woman. I mean, we were so broke, we had to take the subway around with our little cameras, and literally, in some cases, probably putting our life at risk, and certainly our reputations at risk. It cost us about $1,000 to do this, including a plane ticket to California. We also did some videos out here in California, and let me show you a picture of what we looked like. There's me. That really was my grandmother's coat. There's Hannah. So,
where were the real reporters on this story? You know what investigative media? Give me a camera 3. get two kids from the cast of High School Musical 3 to break this story with a video camera and their grandmother's chinchilla coat, and you got nothing? They did it for $3,000. That's Blizzard's monthly beer and wetback budget. It probably cost CNN that much just to turn on their hologram machine.
So, you know, one of the things that's interesting about this whole exercise is, I mean, this was a huge story. I mean, you know, my aunt, who's actually in the room tonight, is from Palo Alto. She was with me when I broke this story. I got 80 phone calls from CNN. And the funny thing about the news business is that, you know, a lot of these journalists were not out to cover me fairly. They were out to try to destroy my character, to deflect from what was being exposed. We live in a society where, regardless of what you think about Ed Snowden and all these other people, we live in a society that is extremely dubious of whistleblowers and skeptical of their motives. And they don't like to focus on what the whistleblowers expose. Cheryl Atkinson has a new book. She was formerly a CBS producer. And she talks about this. Yeah. And what I experienced in this week of my life was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I got phone calls from The Today Show, CNN, ABC News, the Washington Times, the Washington Post, the New York Times. None of those people cared about what the pseudo-government employees said. They only cared about my background, who my father is, what my hometown was like, and who I am. They don't care about what you expose, and I've seen this over and over again, and you'll see the life cycle of these videos. At one point, they just start trying to ignore me because they realized I'm not going to play into their little game. And that's what distinguishes, I think, the stuff that we do from many other journalists. But look at the fallout.
A few days after that, congressional investigations had been called for, and as I write this, the IRS has severed ties to the organization. We live in the age of video, and one video by O'Keefe and Giles has more impact than 10,000 pages of written evidence.
It's amazing, but it's true. You know, one video can have more impact than all the journalism articles in the world. And of course, we got a response from the White House.
The conduct that you see on those tapes is completely unacceptable.
What I know is that what I saw on that video was certainly inappropriate.
We even got a response from the president. So let me talk a little bit about how I got started, and then I can tell some more funny stories. I started this is the #1 question I get asked. Unfortunately, the top 2 questions I get asked, can you guess what they are? The first is, do I fear for my life? And that question makes me sad. That question seems to answer so many other questions. It's so beyond my, I don't think about that when I do this. But people actually ask me, do I fear for my life as a journalist, as a reporter, as someone with a camera going around asking people questions? I should fear for my life? Well, then maybe we're far worse off than I even think we are. And that's sad. But when I started out, I wasn't afraid of much. I was at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I started my own magazine called The Centurion. And at my school, I was really just felt the need to challenge my professors. I felt the need to sort of hold them accountable because there was sort of this groupthink, political correctness on campus. So I started this newspaper, and I would go after the sacred cows, the things that you're not allowed to do, the things you're not allowed to say. One of our most famous alumni, Paul Robeson, was a recipient of the Stalin Peace Prize. I didn't even know there was such a thing. But there is such a thing as the Stalin Peace Prize. And there was a direct quote. I had to dig into the archives to find this, but I did dig. And it was, "Glory to Stalin, forever will his name be honored and beloved in all lands." And this was our #1 alumnus. And you know who else graduated from Rutgers University? Milton Friedman. Class of 1932. I didn't even know that. And I went to the university, so I began a campaign to erect a statue in Milton Friedman's honor. And I sent a letter to the president, you know, just something, not even journalism, just basic questions, you know, hey, why don't you have a statue of Milton Friedman? And that garnered publicity, that created a conversation. People attacked me for some reason. I'm just asking a question. But it begun this whole debate. we did this thing called, we investigated every organization at the university to find out how many taxpayer dollars they got. Some of these organizations, no one even knows what they do. Office of Emerging Populations, Bridging the Gap Retreat. What are these groups? How much money do they get? So we just basically, in one issue, we printed every professor's salary. Because in New Jersey, it's a state university, public information. One of my professors was making $240,000 a year, and he drove a Bentley. So my headline was Lifestyles of the Rich and Marxist. But what really kind of got under my skin was the sort of Orwellian political correctness. And here's an example. We had these sandwiches. They used to tape over the names of the sandwiches because they thought the names of these grease truck sandwiches offended people. Bizarre. So I decided to launch my own campaign to ban Lucky Charms because they're racist against Irish people. So I go into my dining hall university. This is actually the very first hidden camera video I ever did. It wasn't even a hidden camera, it was just a Kodak digital camera with a piece of tape taped over the blinking red light so they couldn't see that it was filming it. And I went in there and said I was a member of this fictitious group called the Irish Heritage Society. There's no such group. And I said to my Dean of Student Affairs, I said, you know what, Dean? Lucky Charms are racist, and I want you to ban them, and this was the video.
Hi, are you? I'm James O'Keefe. James. Canterbury. No, it's not both. Well, we're with the Irish Heritage Society. I'm a personal advisor to James and Keane, and basically they have had some unpleasant, uncomfortable experiences at some of the dining halls. And it's basically, if you want. Well, like Greg said, we're from the Irish Heritage Foundation, it's not recognized by the university, but basically wanted to bring a matter to your concern that we noticed that, at the dining halls here, butlers serve Lucky Charms, and we think that this promotes negative stereotypes of Irish Americans, and we don't think it's acceptable in an academic setting, especially one higher learning. And we brought up a lot of boxes for you to look at here. And, there's what appears to be an Irish American on the front cover, and he's portrayed as a little green cladded gnome huckster, and we think this undermines the importance and severity of St. Patrick's Day, especially during the month of March. So basically what we're trying to do is appeal to... So can you tell me that again? You feel like he's portrayed as a... I think he's portrayed as a little green cladded gnome. And this is really, as you can see, we're not all short. I mean, we have differences of height, it's stereotypical.
Now, I was really struggling to keep a straight face. She says, can you tell me that again? You think he's portrayed as a green-cladded gnome? And I said, yeah, it's a huckster, a little guy wandering. So after this video came out, Rutgers banned Lucky Charms. So, then I started to realize, now I'm on to something. I don't quite know what it is. And certainly this is, kind of tongue-in-cheek, Dartmouth Review style, slapstick humor, but maybe there's something more to this, and I started reading. Luckily, I did have a professor at the university who was a, proponent of Saul Alinsky, and this is well before Saul Alinsky became as infamous as he now is with being one of Obama's mentors. And one of Alinsky's rules was to make them sort of live up to their own rules, live up to their own principles, hold them accountable to what they believe in. And that was the genius of the Lucky Charms. Because in that case, if they ban the Lucky Charms, you all laugh and that's absurd. But in the other case, what if they don't ban the Lucky Charms? What if they don't take my complaints seriously? Well, then they violate their own campus rule book, which says they must take these types of complaints seriously. So I was putting them in an interesting ethical bind. But I've gone on to do many major investigative exposés, and I'm going to run through just a couple and then show you some of the more recent stuff we've done, which I think has been the most impactful on voter fraud. But first, this one, National Public Radio, the fallout from the ACORN was so great. Associated Press doing hit pieces on me, you know, and I got into some legal trouble along the way. I walked into a federal building with a camera. I wasn't supposed to do that. They tried to put me in jail. And the witnessing our media got me so angry that I decided, you know what, I'm going to investigate the media. And one of my buddies was a big thing about the Juan Williams was fired 3 or 4 years ago for his comments. And then another of my buddies had this whole thing about the Muslim Brotherhood, so I said, why don't you two go undercover as the Muslim Brotherhood into NPR. So my friend got a spray tan, got a big long bushy beard, and I said, where are we gonna do this? Let's do it at a nice upscale restaurant in Washington, because Washington it's legal to record people without their permission, unlike California. We'll get to that later. And we need to look like we're high rollers. So we rent a stretch limo, and we pick up the NPR second in command. This is the chief financial officer for National Public Radio, a guy by the name of Ron Schiller. And we pick him up in the stretch limo with the Muslim Brotherhood guys, bring him to the fancy restaurant in D.C. And I had run out of hidden cameras, so I had to give this bag camera to my undercover Muslim guy. He put it on the table right next to the NPR guy, and the rest is history.
O'Keefe, best known for his hidden camera takedowns and for, of course, the least plausible pimp costume ever. What would a pimp wear ski goggles? Well, how bad could the NPR fundraising executive Ron Schiller have been?
You're looking at a sting operation, a setup by people who know how to do it. NPR Foundation executive Ron Schiller thinks he's meeting with a potential donor, but he's actually being punked.
Last month, Schiller went to the posh Georgetown eatery Cafe Mulatto, where he thought he was meeting potential donors affiliated with the fundamentalist Muslim Brotherhood, who were offering a $5 million donation. He was caught on tape trying to ingratiate himself to the donors by disparaging Jews, the Tea Party, and Republicans.
O'Keefe and his operatives went to great lengths for this sting, even setting up a fake website for the Muslim Education Action Center. Then the operatives, posing as wealthy Muslim donors, set up a meeting at this D.C. restaurant and set up a hidden camera inside.
The current Republican Party, particularly the Tea Party, is fanatically involved in people's personal lives and very fundamental Christian. Not just Trump, but really, I mean, basically they believe that they're white, middle America, gun-toting, mean-speed, scary. They're seriously
And I might add, he later adds a slam on Jews. He says Jews control the newspapers, but not NPR. Can you believe this guy? This guy's unbelievable. And he wants to call me a bigot, Sean.
So Juan Williams loses it. Juan Williams goes ballistic on TV. I mean, this is the power of these videos. You really don't, I don't even have, tonight and never have I ever actually told you what my own personal political beliefs are. I don't need to. I just need to turn the camera on and film what they say. And it prompts this outrage. And it's not just outrage. It's outrage that lights a fire under the butts of politicians to take action. What action they take, I don't know. You'll see.
I'm the devil, Sean. Can you believe this?
The House Rules Committee called a, quote, emergency meeting this afternoon to consider a bill that would cut government funding for NPR.
I think that the image that we have seen on the videos tells us something about the internal culture of NPR.
And time after time, people in Congress use these videos. They talk about them. They discuss them. By the way, my adversaries love NPR. I don't know what it is about NPR. They're just one of many. I mean, there's Sirius XM, there's all these radio stations. They've got thousands of media companies, but there's something about the NPR thing that the people, some of them on the left, oh, they just don't touch their NPR. They got really angry about this. And it was great to see our name being tossed around on the floor of the House. But this was the best one. This is my favorite one. So a lot of people say, James, you got to do something on voter fraud and voter integrity and the fairness of our elections. So we did many videos, and I can't show them all tonight, but I can show the one that really got the juices flowing. This whole idea of people going in and voting multiple times, or paying people to vote, coercing people to vote, I decided to apply the Alinsky tactics, one of them being to pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Personalize it by investigating the Attorney General himself. And how would I do that? Well, by going to the place the Attorney General himself cast his own vote in Washington, D.C., in Northwest District of Columbia, the place where he himself cast the ballot, walking up to the podium, because remember, there's no photo ID. There's no photo ID in California, right? No photo ID in California, and there's no photo ID in Washington, D.C. And the enemies of photo ID say it's not possible, you can't do it, it's impossible, there's no voter fraud. Okay, fine, I agree with you. I'm going to go up to the place where Eric Holder cast his own ballot, and I'm going to say, hey, do you have an Eric Holder on your rolls? And I'm going to see what happens.
The Attorney General of the United States, as you know, is a 62-year-old black man named Eric Holder.
But last week, a bearded 23-year-old white man went to Holder's voting precinct here in Northwest D.C. and was offered Holder's D.C. primary ballot to vote in that election. Do you have it?
They actually offered us Eric Holder's ballot. We walked up to the location. They say, here you go, Mr. Holder. I said, I left my driver's license in the car. You don't need it, just go vote. But don't you need to verify I am who I say? No, you don't need to verify anything, just vote. And it was that moment, that cinematic interaction I just described to you that led to states changing their laws. Because nobody thought it was possible. Let's forget that, don't even have the conversation about, does it actually happen in real life, and is it, these law experts actually said, James, it's impossible. That's what these people were saying. So I was not even, like, the first step in Alcoholics Anonymous is to identify you have a problem, not to go down here and talk about how many votes were in Minnesota. So I was just trying to prove a hypothesis that it's impossible, it's not impossible, it's possible. Check this out.
Eric Holder. The actor confirms the address.
There. I actually forgot my ID.
You don't need it, sorry.
I left in the car.
As long as you're here, you're on our list, and that's who you say you are. Okay.
I would feel more comfortable if I just had my ID. Is all right for me to do? I'll be back faster than you can say furious.
We're not going.
I was thinking about how I can do this so it's funny, because it's kind of dry, you know, you get offered the ballot. And I was thinking, let's see, there's the fast and furious. I'll be back fast, furiously. No, that doesn't work. I'll be back faster than you can say furious. And that was a hit. After this came out, got like 1 million views on YouTube. Can you imagine how angry he must have been? I would love to be a fly on the wall of Eric Holder's. Damn that O'Keefe! Why don't we put him in jail in Louisiana? Why didn't you shut him down? Why does he keep... I wasn't even allowed to travel at the time because of all the legal harassment I was getting. And, of course, the best part was he was subpoenaed before Congress to answer the question on why he was offered, why I was offered his ballot.
About your reaction when you saw the video of the young man who claimed your ballot here some months ago.
You know, I mean, it's an attempt to show something, I suppose, but I think what I drew from that video was that that guy was very careful not to say he was Eric Holder, not to actually get a ballot. He didn't do the kinds of things that would have subjected him to criminal prosecution.
Total deflection. Total deflection. Nothing to do with the issue. Well, he didn't break the... He was careful not to actually take that ballot. But the funny thing is, first of all, Eric Holder's on defense. So remember we talked about afflicting the comfortable? So when the CBS News does the broadcast last night about how Dorito and Taco Bell are working together to create a new taco, that's not journalism. That's some type of advertising for corporations. This is journalism. The fact that, I mean, even if you're on the left, and I don't know if there are any people here who are, but I'm sure there's someone from Media Matters, a tracker or something. I mean, I'm in California. But even if you disagree, even if your philosophy is, you know what, I don't like photo ID laws, even if you think that, you still have to admit that this is journalism. That getting the Attorney General of the United States to testify in Congress under oath because some guy with a camera who broke a video on YouTube bypassed the entire mainstream media and did it with a fraction of an infinitesimal fraction of a cost that the New York Times takes to do it, you have to at least say that that's good for our democracy. After this came out, the New York Times was forced to cover it. They don't like to cover it. That's another. I'd love to be in the room where the New York Times managing editor goes, "Oh crap, O'Keefe. Oh, he got the Attorney General to testify. We got to talk about it." We don't have to talk about it. No, we have to talk about it. It's newsworthy. He was testifying in Congress. But we can't talk about it. If we don't talk about it, we're going to have to apologize because we're not breaking news. In other words, we're breaking news they have to cover. And they don't want to cover it, but they have to cover it. New Hampshire passes a law after the video, cites the video. Minnesota passes a law, cites the video, and this is the best part. I can't make this stuff up. On Election Day 2012, Hollywood screenwriters would literally struggle. I mean, this is a very artistic state. They would struggle to come up with this stuff. Eric Holder actually made sure that there was a picture of himself on the poll place where he cast his ballot so that nobody else could get offered his ballot again. Just stop and think about that for another minute. Here's a guy who's against photo ID. But he wants photo ID for himself. How many of you have read the book Animal Farm? Remember that whole thing about some are equal but aren't equal than others? He doesn't like photo ID, but he does like photo ID. This is what journalism is about. It's about when someone tells you, I believe X, you say, no you don't, you believe in Y, and here's video of it. And that's why what we're doing is so important, and what's remarkable and what my book is about, and I encourage you, after I'm done talking to, in Q&A, come up and I'll sign it for you. It's about that. It's about why is it that I have so many enemies when I think that this is really important for our society. I can't tell you every story. I'm going to have to skip through a few, but this one is hilarious. So after Eric Holder, I got offered Eric Holder's ballot. Eric Holder was very angry. And I did this, and I went around, I did New Hampshire, I did North Carolina, I did all these states. So I can't make this stuff up. The Attorney General of New Hampshire issued me a criminal grand jury subpoena. He said, you're not allowed to film people in these locations. You're breaking some antiquated law that I've never used before, but I'm going to use it against you because I don't like you. And he issued me a criminal grand jury subpoena, the guy's name, in New Hampshire. The Deputy Attorney General's name is Richard Head. So Dick Head was working with Holder. That's Richard W. Head. He signs his letters Richard W. Head to try to obfuscate from the obvious. Dick Head was coordinating with Holder in New Hampshire. And there's actually a chapter in my book called The Rise of Richard Head. There's me presenting my book to Richard Head. And it's a little vulgar, but he kind of does look like a human penis here. And there I am. And the funny thing about when I walked into Dick Head's office, there was no metal detectors in New Hampshire, and he actually talked to me. I encourage you to go to YouTube and watch this video. It's about 7 minutes long. I had all these cameras follow me into the New Hampshire, Attorney General's office. There's Dick Head coming out. He's actually shocked to see me. But I told him all about how he worked with Holder. We issued FOIA requests. It's a fascinating story. I'm going to show you a couple more videos. This is a favorite of mine. In New York State, where my office is currently located, Westchester, New York, to be exact, about 2 years ago, they printed all the names of the gun owners. Do you remember this? So they printed all the addresses of everyone who owns a gun, and this created an outcry. Everyone thought this was wrong. It was a public safety problem. It was a constitutional problem. So we decided to do a little experiment. Some of these people say, we need gun-free zones. We need these gun-free zones in our schools, and we need these gun-free zones in our communities. I said, okay, I agree. And I like Saul Alinsky too. So I'm gonna create this group called Citizens Against Senseless Violence, anti-gun group. And I'm gonna walk up to these same individuals who are for gun-free zones, and I'm going to ask them to kindly put a sign in their front yards broadcasting to everyone that my home is proudly gun-free. I wonder what they might say.
Law that says no guns here. We're not afraid. We're defenseless. We are not afraid. Join us.
Join us.
Join us. Because there's strength in numbers.
A suburban New York City newspaper is in the middle of a big controversy this morning after it put up online the names and addresses of everyone with a gun permit.
We also know which houses don't have guns.
Since these reporters and editors did not consider it a violation of the privacy and safety of others to reveal which homes have guns and which homes don't, we went to see which of them would be willing to put up a sign publicly declaring their homes to be gun-free zones. While we didn't find any members of the media with the strength of their convictions, we did find quite a few guns, and some good explanations for why they might be necessary.
We're with Citizens Against Senseless Violence. Is this?
I'm sorry, I can't tell. Good luck.
No. Is you don't care about children? Is this? We're just trying to get people to know this and to see these.
Other reasons I think
Do you have guns?
I am on your side on this, but I'm just wondering if that's not an invitation to somebody with a gun.
I mean, this is interesting. This guy works for the Star Ledger, which is a Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper in the state. He's the #1 anti-gun guy, and he is making a pro-gun argument unbeknownst to him. So I say, hey, can I put this sign in the lawn? And he doesn't know I'm undercover. He thinks I'm legitimately against guns. I say, can I put this sign here that broadcasts to everyone that it's a gun-free zone? He's like, but if I did that, that would actually invite burglars to come in. And part of me wanted to break character and say, but you just wrote an op-ed to the exact opposite. Remember the Eric Holder photo thing? These people don't believe in the things they publicly say. They are lying to you. If you are really for gun-free zones, that's fine. Just be consistent.
Hi, we're Citizens Against Senseless Violence. We're going around. This home is proudly gun-free. Well, you're against guns?
Yes.
Against guns. I'm not. Does that answer your question? Yeah, they put us down on that internet, and they put my wife's name by mistake.
You believe that?
They're against guns.
You're against guns.
I said, I'm not.
So there was a guy who actually had a gun with him. Amazing things happen when you don't, taping things and things like that happen. Actually, after this happened, they took down the database of gun permit holders, so our video prompted them to take action again. This is probably, if not my favorite video, it's one of, so it didn't get a lot of media coverage, but I think this is the funniest video we ever did. So in New York, also where our office is located, a lot of people said, James, why don't you look into this whole idea of makeshift work where they're just sort of digging holes and they're just sort of doing this work and they're not really accomplishing anything. The sort of the stimulus work. So I decided to create a fictitious company and call it Earth Supply and Renewal. And the mission of Earth Supply and Renewal would be to dig holes and fill them back in again. And I wanted to see if I could actually secure taxpayer funding to dig ditches and fill them back up.
Well, there's shovel-ready jobs, but is it all a big excuse to fill the trough of greedy unions?
So what exactly do we do at Earth Supply? I'm glad you asked. Our jobs are shovel-ready, literally. First, our excavation specialists insert their shovels into the ground and remove the soil. This presents the problem of an existing hole in the earth, creating a dangerous situation that could lead to hazards, including but not limited to tripping, falling, and bodily injuries. Then there is the renewal process. At Earth Supply, we train professional backfillers to renew the soil in place of the existing hole, restoring the earth to its original condition. Some folks say we're just digging ditches and filling them back up again. It's about more than that. It's about jobs. And what's more, public employee unions understand these jobs are worth your taxpayer dollars.
In reality, that's a company O'Keefe created to bait the unions. And what a catch he got. Check this out.
Both you guys work for Earth Supply and Renewal, right? That's correct. And he's been digging the ditches. Then we dig the ditch, we take the dirt, and we put the dirt. We actually just take the dirt and put it right back in the ground. It sounds like it almost is exactly the same as where we were with Green Jobs Free New York.
Yeah, it's like what we do here every day. I mean, yeah, what's the difference? I mean, and it looks like something out of The Sopranos because this guy's on the right was like, his name was actually Tony Tucci. It's like Tony Barebones Tucci. And I was like, people actually said, don't release this video, they're going to kill you. Again, I don't worry about that type of thing, but they were quite the characters.
Yeah, you just want to get the money. Then you figure out afterward, we can figure out the other stuff.
Yeah, that's not something out of The Sopranos or some bad B movie. Reality.
And it is reality. It's cinema verite. I gotta skip past some of this stuff here. This is what Rush Limbaugh says about Veritas. And I think he says it in a very pithy way about who we are and why we're effective.
James O'Keefe, maybe a good description, a good analogy would be to compare him to the special forces of the conservative movement infiltrating enemy lines and becoming amongst them and getting them on videotape being who they are. Therefore, no explanation is required.
And it's that last thing he says, no explanation is required. By the way, this is another thing that happened that I thought was incredible. We did this story in Texas going after voter fraud and some of the new ACORN offshoot groups. And the front page of the Austin Statesman did a story, and they actually, because they were so afraid of our minions filming them, that they and this is a direct quote from Wade Rathke, who founded ACORN and now works in Texas. He says, quote, "We put out guides on how to identify possible O'Keefe minions. We set up an early warning system in our offices for any suspicious characters, and we did office-by-office training sessions on how to handle O'Keefers." So they're very scared. Now, this is another big one. Everyone's talking about the children coming across the border, Guatemalan children, and this, that, and the other thing. And I said, no, I don't want to talk about the children. I want to talk about national security. This is during the summer of this year, just a few months ago. Everyone's talking about the border. Someone said, James, you should cross the border and just film yourself. I wouldn't be breaking American law, but I would be breaking Mexican law, so hopefully I don't get caught. Another person said, gee, he's a terrorist, like ISIS could just cross the border. So I decided to dress like a terrorist and cross the border.
He's back! Not Bin Laden, James O'Keefe.
This video, it's from the conservative watchdog group, Project Veritas.
Waiting across the Rio Grande to show how easy it is to evade border security.
A recent trip by investigative reporter James O'Keefe was documented and played at the local grassroots meeting. This video has caught a lot of attention online.
Also video of filmmaker James O'Keefe donning an Osama bin Laden mask and crossing the Rio Grande.
I mean, and what was remarkable was how, I mean, it went so viral. It got millions of views on YouTube. We also crossed Lake Erie on a Zodiac boat, dressed like an ISIS guy here. And we had bags of ricin and Ebola, fake Ebola. That was me interviewing the sheriff. The fence just ends. I was in West Hudspeth County, Texas. The fence literally just goes for a mile, ends, and then goes for another mile. Someone should do a story about who paid for this fence that doesn't even, it's not even a fence. And very crazy stuff happening, and it's not just all fun and games. Once again, another member of our federal government is forced to answer the question, why did you lie and say our border is secure when O'Keefe can cross it dressed like bin Laden?
Well, you know, it's interesting because an American reporter named James O'Keefe, dressed as Osama bin Laden, walked across the border of the Rio Grande River undetected. Does something like that concern you?
Actually, sir, he was not undetected. He was known to the border security agencies who saw him.
Then why didn't they stop him when he came across?
Sir, I can't answer that question.
No, you can't answer it because they're not there to stop.
Need I say more? No, we saw him, we were going to stop him. Why didn't you stop him? I don't know. And in fact, we were down there, I didn't see any federal people anywhere. I saw some local sheriffs. They're outgunned, outnumbered. They were in fear for their lives of the cartel. How many of these journalists in New York City do you think actually go outside their cubicle? Do you realize that most journalists wake up every day, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, they have a car drive them to their studio, they go to their studio, they read off a teleprompter, they proceed to get back into their car and go home. They don't actually do anything like this, and yet they attack me. And I say, don't attack me unless you go out in the field and do it yourself. And that's what, you know, it's getting to a point now where they can't attack me because it just makes them look bad. Journalists need to actually grow some balls and actually do some actual field work before they attack me. So I'm just about wrapping it up here. Let's see if I have anything else to show you. Let's see what else. We did some election work recently. How many people saw some of our videos most recently on the Senate elections? Some. We exposed some of the candidates running recently for re-election. We caught some people working for Allison Grimes in Kentucky saying what she really felt about that issue, that she was lying. We put her on defense. She was forced to respond to this and talk about why her own candidates were lying. After we did this, she made Drudge, made the local newspapers. We actually caught one donor on tape saying that once she gets elected, she's going to blank her people over. Hidden camera sting. After we did this, the Democrats pulled all funding out of that Kentucky Senate race. There's me, undercover. I actually had makeup, and to make myself look 25 years older, I'm 30. Here I'm 58. I had a mustache put on. Mother Jones Magazine put out an article saying, we caught James trying to bait us into voter fraud, but then I released the actual story.
A new video is reinforcing old fears that Colorado's all-mail ballot election is ripe for voter fraud. Conservative activist James O'Keefe, whose undercover stings target Democrats, is out with a video today that appears to show liberal activists in Colorado endorsing voter fraud.
And we think they're probably going to, they're all registered and all like move downstate.
Oh, yeah?
House. So they're all going to get their ballots sent to...
So just vote for them with those ballots?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. It's putting the votes to good use. So really, truly, like...
It's good. It's putting the votes to good use to fill them out. But this individual actually goes on to tell us where we can find these mail-in ballots, other people's votes, what neighborhood, what dumpster we can go into to find the ballots.
The Greenpeace activist on the tape goes on to suggest that discarded ballots could be collected from what she called ghetto Aurora, saying that African Americans and Mexicans tend to throw out their ballots. She would not comment about that to us today. We asked 9 News reporter Steve Steger to find out whether the voter fraud scheme floated in O'Keefe's video could actually happen.
They actually fired this individual. After they did so, I'm in Silicon Valley, this is interesting, my name was trending on Facebook. The top 3 people, I was alongside Kim Kardashian and Honey Boo Boo. And so my name was trending. This is the first time in my entire career. That's a big deal. You know, it's a big deal to get covered on local media, but it's a big deal with a network with a few 100 million users to be the second most talked about thing in the world. After my name was trending on Facebook, this is another incredible series of events. Facebook shut my page down. They shut my page down the next day. So, there it was, account disabled. Your account has been disabled. I didn't know why my account was disabled. I didn't do anything wrong. So I called up a reporter, a friend of mine, and said, can you, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Can you write a story about this? He called up Facebook headquarters, talked to their top people and said, and this is what he said, I'm going to quote him, there's an email he sent to me. I don't know if I actually did this, but the timing is amusing. I told him I was on a tight deadline doing a story about Facebook playing political favorites like the IRS, and I pasted your disabled URL, and your page went back up within 90 seconds. So, this is unbelievable. They're trying to shut me down, they're trying to put me in jail, dickheads trying to indict me. Facebook in Palo Alto is trying to ban me, but they can't stop me. They just can't stop me because I keep going. And then, most recently we did a story, this AP reporter, I was giving a press conference in North Carolina with some of the new tapes, and this AP reporter is just so angry, he said, You're not a journalist. I said, why not? He said, you're just not. I'm like, well, I am a journalist. I am just as much of a journalist as you are. And he said, why don't you release your full, raw video? I said, most of the time we do. I'm not going to do it today. I said, why don't you release your full, raw reporter notebooks? And he got very angry about that. I think I have a pic. There he is. He was pretty upset. He wanted my raw tapes. I said, why don't you release your reporter notebooks? No reporter releases their full raw reporter notebooks because they compromise both their sources and their methods. But they hold me to a higher standard than they hold themselves. And that's the interesting thing. So that's Project Veritas, that's who I am, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have. Afterwards, there's going to be a book signing. Thank you very much.
And while we're waiting for some questions to gather, if you could just clarify for me one quick thing. I couldn't tell from your presentation, are you or are you not actually Eric Holder? Just kidding.
Do I look like a 62-year-old African-American Attorney General?
One of the things you alluded to in your talk that I don't think you had a chance to cover, we'd be interested in understanding why you can't operate in California.
Why I can't work in California? By the way, if you pick up a copy of my book, there's 2 chapters on why I can't work in California. And the reason is your state has what they call a privacy law, where you're not allowed to record somebody without their permission. You can do it in an area where there's no expectation of privacy. It's statute 632. I actually went to federal court 2 years ago and tried to overturn the law. I argued it was unconstitutional, especially when it relates to government workers. I lost that argument and was forced to settle with an ACORN employee. And it significantly damaged my reputation online, because if you Google me, the first thing you'll see is James O'Keefe settles with ACORN. But that law was not about defamation. It was not about lying. It was about privacy. And it's ironic that the same people who say that it's wrong for me to tape government workers are all about transparency. Unfortunately, in California, you just can't. You have a hostile attorney general who doesn't like me and doesn't like what I do. And the only solution is to do it in open areas where there is no expectation of privacy. So if I work in California, it has to be in an area where there's a lot of people who can overhear the person talking.
All right, here's a question from somebody that maybe wants to become an O'Keefe minion. Do you accept work from local citizen journalists? And if so, what do you look for?
In other words, do we recruit? We absolutely. Veritas is expanding. We get sent about 50 ideas a week. I can choose 2 a month. So obviously I need to expand my operations. We're a non-for-profit right now. Maybe that may change one day. We started with no money, and now we have a modest but budget that I have 20 people working with me. And in addition to full-time staff, we have these videographers, sort of like SEAL Team 6, going around stinging various people. So if you're interested in working for me, the website is projectveritas.com. That's VERITAS.com. And there's a place you can submit, say you want to get involved. And we're always in need of more people to go out and film things.
Can you share anything about any instances where your targets actually suspected or recognized you?
Yeah, most recently in Colorado, the mustache didn't quite do the trick. And there was one, it's odd. People will say, one time I was in New Jersey actually, and the worker said, "You look like that pimp." And I said, "Excuse me? What did you just say?" And in this case, I was actually, the ruse was I was posing as a Republican voter. That was the ruse. So I said, "You that pimp on Fox News." And I said, "Are you calling all Republicans pimps?" Like I acted dumb, but they don't. Most people don't pay attention to politics. Like less than 3% of the people actually watch cable news. So it's people are very uninformed. And if I get to a point where everyone is on edge about doing something wrong, then I will have done my job. I'm not there yet.
How do you make a living doing what you do?
Sort of like Matt Drudge, at first it was a labor of love. At first I literally had nothing. Put it on my credit card. Got maybe a couple people would send me $25 to $100 here and there. 4 years ago we had nothing. Now we are a fully tax-exempt nonprofit organization. Our financials are public. But this year, Project Veritas has raised $3 million. And half of that last year was in actually small donations. So it's very unique because we're crowdsource funded. And that makes us very special in that sense because we're not controlled by 1 or 2 people.
So it seems like all or most of your targets generally tend to be on the left. Have you gone after any targets on the right? So what were your results?
We absolutely have. We did a sting this year on the president of the Wisconsin State Senate, a guy by the name of Mike Ellis. And Mike Ellis actually was talking on hidden camera how to create his own super PAC, which is totally illegal. He resigned. We also, in the ballot sting you just saw, where we going offered ballots, we'd actually get offered Republican ballots. So that's not really a partisan thing. You're being offered dead people's ballots, the names of Republicans and Democrats. But we also went after James Stensenbrenner, Congressman Stensenbrenner, for one of his pieces of legislation. But the main one was Ellis. It took down the president of the Wisconsin State Senate, and that was a story that made the front page of every Wisconsin paper. Our targets tend to skew left because the left makes a lot of claims about the benevolence of government and the altruism of organizations, and I question that. I question people's intentions and people's motives, and we tend to go after the organizations that give out the benefits as opposed to the people who receive them. And that's sort of the philosophy behind it. It's a philosophy of questioning altruism of our government. And there's plenty of journalists who investigate the Koch brothers and investigate all those things. There are no journalists who do what I do, so I feel like we're filling a void. And they call themselves journalists. Rachel Maddow, she considers herself a journalist. David Corn has never investigated a Republican in his entire life. He won the Polk Prize, the Polk Award. Second to Pulitzer Prize for the hidden camera video he did not even do. Someone sent that to him and he just released it. So if David Corn can win a Pulitzer for just publishing a hidden camera video, I don't think I'm the worst person in the world for actually conducting the investigations into the people I do.
Can you talk about your tactic of releasing videos one at a time, waiting for the left to deny that the practice is widespread, and then following up with more videos?
We did this with the ACORN story pretty well. We released the first one, and the CNN reported it was an isolated incident. And I was just dying to say it wasn't, but Breitbart at the time, who was my mentor, he just said, just wait until tomorrow. And then tomorrow released the second one. So the New York Times ombudsman had to actually apologize because they were caught, kind of saying this is an isolated thing, people were caught in a lie, literally lying. I mean, these news media people, not only are they not doing journalism, they're now engaged in news suppression, trying to say, well, it was only one office. I remember being 25 years old. First time I was saying, how do they know it's only one office? I know it's not one office, but they're just going out on a limb and making that assumption. And it was really incredible to watch. That's what the strategy was. Release, don't fire all your ammunition at once, to use a military term.
Al Sharpton's National Action Network seems to be an outgrowth of ACORN. Do you have any plans to go after that organization?
We've investigated Organizing for America, we've investigated LIUNA, we've investigated Battleground groups. We've investigated a lot of these ACORN offshoots. I don't think that ACORN should not exist, but if there's fraud and abuse and waste, we will root it out wherever it is, and most of it lies in the voter registration outreach. I don't have a problem with people doing voter registration outreach as long as they're doing it within the law.
Are you looking at any investigative opportunities regarding the IRS?
Oh yeah. That's my next one, but they're gonna come after me. They're gonna try to come after me in a major way, and unfortunately another law that we have in our country is the United States Code 1001, which makes it illegal, a felony, to lie to a federal employee. I would argue that what I do, I'm not actually lying, it's a ruse. I'm just, I'm like Borat. But I doubt that, the United States Attorney and the current administration would agree with me on that. So I don't really want to go to jail again. It's an unpleasant place. And I need a lawyer. I need someone to appeal to the Supreme Court and say that investigative reporting is not lying under USC 1001. Until that point, it's very challenging for me to actually investigate a federal government body using these techniques, because they'll try to say it's illegal. These are all fascinating questions. You would think the Columbia Journalism Review would talk about this stuff, but instead they go, off with his head, throw O'Keefe in jail. This is about muckraking. This is the type of stuff that Lincoln Stevens and Upton Sinclair and all these people were all about, but they don't care about it anymore. And I would like to have this conversation in the New York Times. People need to have the conversation I'm having with you right this minute, but they don't want to have this conversation. And that's what really saddens me, and that's why I wrote right through was to address those issues.
Is there anyone else who engages in real journalism today, or are you completely unique?
There are people. There are people who do journalism, and I actually think it's a dying thing, because the problem is that the journalists need to, and I know what it feels like, and this is the reason why I'm not based in Washington, D.C. It's the reason why I refuse. I have a 24-hour rule. I don't wish to be in D.C. for more than 24 hours because of the ethos of the place. When you become a reporter, your first instinct is to build a relationship with your sources, and then you can't burn them. What I do is I burn every source. But what they do is they have friends with the people in government, and they feed off them. So they can't really go adversarial. So what Michael Hastings did, and he was the guy who worked for Newsweek, is he talked about the fact that in order to do journalism, you have to actually become an independent. You have to branch out on your own. You have to go out into the wilderness and do it completely at your own risk. So there are people, I mean, many people in this room would find him very controversial, but Glenn Greenwald, what he did and what Ed Snowden exposed and what Glenn Greenwald reported on, he did journalism. And he took on very powerful people. And I wish people would focus more on the things that they exposed and less on the people who exposed them.
I switched microphones, so hopefully this one's working. Would you consider going into a mosque undercover to obtain subversive sermons?
Was that the question, would I consider going into a mosque? I'd have to really think about that. I have some reservations about going into places of worship, whatever they are. I mean, we did pose as the Muslim Brotherhood, but I also don't want to, you know, I want to be careful about stereotyping groups of people. The Osama bin Laden stunt, I didn't just dress up like a Muslim, I dressed like the world's most notorious terrorist. So, but I'd have to think about that one. There's some ethical issues I have to really think about.
Other than Mr. Dickhead, what other government officials have tried to come after you?
It's incredible how many government officials have tried to come after me. There was, I've been sued half a dozen times. I've had criminal grand jury subpoenas, threatened with the criminal grand jury subpoena. And one of the things that happens is when you get these threats, the instant reaction is to just sort of cower in a shell and get scared. And in my case, it was literally, I was at the precipice. Every time I did this, I didn't really have any political allies to speak of in many cases. So I was literally operating completely at my own risk when I released these stories. Completely. No insurance, no indemnification, no powerful people in Washington are going to protect me. And it was nerve-wracking. In the case of Dickhead, they actually went to the home of my reporters in New Hampshire, and in the middle of the night, threw a subpoena on their table and said, we're going to come after you, we're going to put you in jail unless you cooperate. This is a long story. I don't want to get into all of it. It's in the book. But I was arrested in New Orleans. My actual crime in New Orleans was, and Mary Landrieu is running for re-election, and I may or may not have a video that I'm releasing on her. But Senator Landrieu was not answering her phones. So I went in and thought it would be cute if I posed as a telephone technician and said, hey, do you have a problem with your phone? That was it. That was the only thing I was doing. It was just like a YouTube video. So unfortunately, one of my guys got off script and started talking about fixing the phones, and the FBI came, and like, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm just making a YouTube video. They said, we don't believe you. And then they arrested me, and they put me in shackles and handcuffs, and they kept me for 24 hours in a federal jail. And then they interrogated me. They were going to let me go. But then when they found out that I was the ACORN guy, they said, no, we're not going to let you go now. And then I was like, oh, what on earth could they charge me with? I remember sitting there thinking, walking into a building wearing a hard hat is not a crime, right? Well, they charged me with a crime I didn't commit. they charged me with a felony for trying to literally destroy federal government property. It was the most ridiculous thing. And it's an incredible story. It talks about in the book. I was in jail and I hadn't slept in 2 days. They bring me into this hearing and they put me in a Timothy McVeigh jumpsuit. It's all just a circus to destroy me. It made the front page of the New York Times. They didn't care about ACORN, but they put me on the front page of the New York Times in a jumpsuit. And then suddenly the lawyers, I'm sitting in a booth in this jail, and I haven't even been able to talk to my lawyer, and they say, you're being charged with a felony that carries 10 years. You're being charged with trying to destroy the property owned by the federal government. I said, what? And I realized I shouldn't have signed my Miranda rights and even told the agents down there. Turns out, guess what happened? It's a long story, but 3 years later, the people who prosecuted me all resigned in disgrace for their overzealous behavior. So there is justice in the world, and I think the justice comes out of the fact that I didn't give up. It was really tough. They gave me a misdemeanor eventually after I had a really good lawyer, and they destroyed the videotape that I took in that building. I videotape everything I do, so I just said, oh, my videotape will vindicate me. They destroyed my videotape. So it was unbelievable, and it was really hard for me to continue doing it, and I understand why others don't do it, because it's tough. But that's one example. There are many more. But I think we've gotten to a point where if they come after us, I think we have enough of a fan base and a support system where hopefully they don't get away with it.
Would you consider creating a video on sustainable development or Agenda 21 to expose the elitist plan to re-engineer our cities?
I would say that any tips and ideas you have like that, we have a website, you can submit them. We get a lot of tips. I can't do them all, but I can't say I am or I'm not going to do something. It's just a matter of sending it along to our website, and I'll look into it, and maybe I will. But I don't reveal, with the exception of the IRS and Mary Landrieu, what I'm going to do in the future. Because I'm going to do both of those.
Oh, boy. All right, just a couple more here. Do you have any ties to any of the organizations that are trying to prevent voter fraud, such as in California Election Integrity Project, in Texas True the Vote, and so forth?
Yeah, we did. I've spoken at the True the Vote conference, and Voter Integrity Project in North Carolina was with us with that investigation. For the most part, we are independent. We don't coordinate with political campaigns. It's actually, some would say, unlawful for a nonprofit to coordinate. I have never even spoken to the people that you saw in Congress there, interrogating those people. Our videos just naturally prompt state legislatures to do these types of things. I don't coordinate with them, and that's, I think, just a great thing. I don't need to lobby people. The videos speak for themselves. So I know the people in these groups, and if they have ideas, I encourage them to send them my way, but I don't really coordinate as much as I can.
All right, I've saved a tough probing question for last. How do you keep a straight face when you're making those videos?
It's one of those things where sometimes you do want to laugh, and you just laugh. So in the case of Lucky Charms, it was like, we're not all short. I mean, we have our differences of height. You just turn it into an emotional plea. And I took an acting class in college, and they said if you're nervous, you should just channel your nervousness into a public way. So if you're nervous, just be nervous. If you're thinking of laughing, just laugh. I mean, just don't try to hide it, is what I'm trying to say. But a lot of time spent in the mirror, practicing. And also, too, when you're in the moment, it's very nerve-wracking. You could get found out, they could recognize you, but they never do. They just sort of go along. I often try to shock these people. They shock me by going along with this ridiculous ruse. But as I get more recognizable, I have to get more makeup and get more people. We'll be signing books. Thank you very much.